Yo, what's up everybody? It's Drewbear, and today we're doing a discussion video on tech cards. Now, this was inspired from a video by KM Best, who is notably one of the best Marvel Snap players to exist. He got to like infinite rank 250, just nuts season over season. He's one of the best. And then also I was chilling on Molt's stream as I do on my lunch breaks, and this conversation came up again, and I'm seeing more and more posts about it. So I kind of wanted to give my take on it, and that is tech cards in Marvel Snap. Now, KM Best does a fantastic job. I'm going to link his video and Molt's channel in the description below if you want to check out their content to see those discussions happening in real time. But he does a fantastic job of breaking down why tech cards are a bit of a problem in Marvel Snap. And in particular, he covers why leaders are a problem and how it kind of ties in to tech cards. So we'll get into that in just a second. So you're probably wondering, what is a tech card? It's a bit of a gray area because that is going to change dependent on the meta. The description above, I think, rings the most true for me. I found a few descriptions online. I think they all kind of say the same thing, in that a tech card is a card that is not necessary to complete the strategy of the deck, okay? So you're putting it in despite not synergizing with your core idea of your deck. It is added to the list to help with certain matchups or strengthen up weaknesses. So you're basically, another way of saying this, and from how I interpret tech cards, is a counter option to the active meta. Okay, so you're throwing it in there to counter whatever's going on so that you have an advantage in case it comes up. So my question is it good or bad if tech cards are the most played cards in Snap? And the whole reason I'm making this video is, well, inspired by these two right here, but also because if you look at the win rates here, which KM Best also mentioned, this is from Snap.fan, the games seen from top to bottom of all Marvel Snap cards in the last season. And look at all of these tech cards. Whether you consider these tech or not, if you want to call them counter, be my guest, doesn't really matter. The fact of the matter is that all these are being thrown into decks. And the problem that I have is almost all of them are in the same deck. See, I don't mind if tech cards are being played. I think I'm of the opinion tech cards are extremely healthy. We have to have tech against everything. I think it's necessary, but I think it's at its best when it is the last card put in your deck, the 12th or 11th option when you're deck building, and not the first 5 or whatever you want to call it. Unless you're doing a pure control deck, then maybe that could be the case. But if you do assemble a deck like that, in my opinion, it shouldn't do very well, because you should just be countering with a bunch of different options, a variety of decks, but with just one card, right? So you have your on reveal counter, you have your ongoing counter, your destroy counter, but maybe the decks that you play don't really focus on that, and then you're probably going to have a hard time. So those control decks shouldn't really work. Well, right now there are decks with Cosmo, Killmonger, Armor, Leader, Scorpion, Iceman, Arrow, literally that is one of like the top decks right now. And then there's the leech thing going on. So another big point here is Leader really a tech card, you know? And KM Best in his video, he describes it a lot better than I ever can. But essentially, yes, because it just counters everything your opponent wants to do on turn 6. It's literally, you wanted to do a fun thing on turn 6. Well, guess what? I played Leader and I just get whatever you were hoping to play. Obviously, a Leader himself can be countered, and there's Cosmo and stuff like that. But overall, I think he's a tech option. Like, people are just slotting him in there for that turn 6 win. Like, I don't think you're really building the deck around Leader. You're not supporting him in any fashion. The Leech Leader is in a combo, and maybe that in its own right could be its own deck. But I think for the most part, what's at the top of the meta is a total tech deck. And I think there's a bit of a problem, and I think people are really, really frustrated about it. So let's get into the bad. All right, so the bad. I have the bad and the good. Remember, I'm 50-50 on this topic, okay? I like tech cards, but there's some problems, and here they are, in my opinion. Leader. Yeah, no-brainer, Leader. He's an absolute menace right now. Everyone's tilted about him. Everybody wants him to be changed, and within good reason. It's just not that fun to be on turn 6 and be like thinking about your really cool turn that you can pull off, but it won't be that cool because your opponent's going to do the exact same thing as you, +4 power. Feels bad. Now, obviously, there's scenarios where you can make a play and then leader won't copy it exactly, so they kind of get wrecked. Or you could play Cosmo and shut down the leader if you can guess where it's going to be played. But for the most part, it's a bit of a checkmate. If your hand just is trying to output power, leader is going to stop you and just copy and win the game. And the worst part about leader, I think, is that he is a turn 6 play. So you don't even have the opportunity to retreat and save your cubes if you wanted to. It's already happened. Sometimes people get leader out on 5, but if they're doing that, they're probably going to follow up with an Odin and just double copy whatever you got. So in the end, you end up losing those extra cubes because you're super stoked on your big combo that you're about to play, and then it just gets wrecked by leader. It's really frustrating. I think the whole player base right now is a little upset with it, and the nerf is probably on its way. But let's look at the tech cards a little bit more in detail. So I believe that some tech cards should have a counter. Check this out. So I'm a huge fan of Fire Emblem, okay? So I played a lot of Fire Emblem, and they do the simple weapon triangle, right? So your sword beats your axe beats your spear beats your sword, and it just goes around, and you kind of have to work with that circle of life, okay? But in Marvel Snap, every counter has its own stat line. It also has a different way of countering or teching into the game, which kind of creates a little bit of problems, I think, because now the balance isn't quite there. Now, obviously, they do have to be different. It'd be really boring if they were all the same. If they all just cost 3, had 3 power, and they countered a thing, well, then that would just be lame. They have to be unique, right? They have to be unique cards, but they can still be balanced. Let's look at Cosmo. I think he's the biggest problem, actually, of the tech cards for a few reasons. Whether you don't like Cosmo, you think he's fine, whatever. Here's some facts. Cosmo counters on reveal cards. On reveal cards are the most popular cards in Marvel Snap that are printed to date. There's a little under 200 cards in the game right now, as of December 2022. If you're watching this in the future, it might have changed. But he then counters 108. That's over 50% of cards in the game that he straight up silences. He just straight up says, no, you don't get to do what you wanted to do. Now, there's some conditions to Cosmo that makes him a little bit more within reason. Okay, 1, he only counters 1 lane, right? So he has to guess which lane you're going to play at. 2, he's 3 power for 3 cost. Honestly, that's kind of good. It's not that bad, which is kind of frustrating on his own right. And then 3, oh wait, there's no 3. Dude, like what else is bad about Cosmo? Not really anything, which is why he's so easy to be thrown in a bunch of decks, because you're probably going to screw up your opponent at some point. A lot of the destroy decks, a lot of the discard decks rely on reveals. They get shut down. On reveal decks themselves, you wanted to do a big Wong Black Panther combo or whatever have you, well, Cosmo shuts that down. And that brings me to a fair point. It's good that he shuts that down. That combo would be bonkers if Cosmo didn't exist, right? Everybody would be running it because it'd be way too consistent and easy. So Cosmo is a necessary evil, as are all of these tech cards, okay? But geez, I really feel like we could pedal back on Cosmo a little bit. He's got way too much good going for him. He shouldn't have the stat line that he does. I think maybe he should be 1 power or 0 power, and then, okay, miss negative issues possibly. Okay, maybe we don't mess with his power. Let's make him 4. Because as you're going to see in the good, there's a card that I think is balanced that shuts down an entire archetype that costs more than Cosmo, but the benefits aren't quite there to make it balanced. We'll get there in a second. But lastly, I just want to note on how it doesn't feel good when you get teched against, okay? So like if your opponent's deck is aimed at shutting down your deck and you just happen to roll into them maybe 2 or 3 times, it feels super bad, especially those who have limited collections, right? If you don't have leader and you keep getting rocked by leader, and it's not like, oh, well, you'll just get them eventually. Well, dude, that could be a month or 2. Like the collection progress is quite slow. Leader could be your last card in pool 3, and that is, we're talking like collection level 3000. So it might take a while before you even have the opportunity to play with that fun tech card, if you want to call it fun, to finally squash all of the opponents that have been smacking in the face with the big green guy. So like, come on, I don't know. It's just a bit frustrating when it's limited collections. It also like deck experimentation. Like I'm just nervous to create some kind of crazy on reveal deck because I know Cosmo exists? Or like, what if I'm really setting up a big turn 6 power play? Well, if leader's everywhere, that's not going to work out for me. So all of a sudden, when I'm building decks, I'm trying to think of the meta, which is healthy. Okay, we have to bring it back. I know I'm pushing on the pedal a little bit against tech cards, but I'm going to bring it back. It's good that I have to consider the meta when I'm deck building. That's healthy. It's always going to be around. There's always going to be a meta. I always have to consider it when I'm building my decks. But right now, we are in a rough meta where this is really limiting the deck creativity, and collection progress doesn't help it. So I just wanted to mention those. I'm really curious to what people think about these, but let's get into the good. So tech cards are necessary. That's kind of what I was saying by a necessary evil. You know, you might get shut down every now and then. It's going to suck, but we need tech cards. If anything, to be totally honest with you guys, I want more tech cards. I want all kinds of crazy tech cards, as long as they find a better balance, because I think on average they should have worse stats, they should have more restrictions, so that you have to really skillfully find a way to play these cards, because they can make for some really skillful deck building and play patterns. If you have a Cosmo that's difficult to play, difficult to read your opponent's play on, it's great to play him at that location and shut your opponent out. That's gonna feel great. Or like another one is Rogue, which I didn't even have in the examples, but like you rogue and steal a Devil Dino thing at the very end of the game, maybe, like that's like a huge big play, and then you get around the leader as well. Like there's a lot of skillful plays that come from the tech cards that can make for some really fun and exciting moments, and I do not want to lose that. If anything, I want more of that. I just feel like some of these cards need their numbers tweaked. For instance, KM Best said that he thinks almost every tech card should have its power reduced by 1, except for Enchantress. I think that was the only one that he said is in a good state. And here's some reasons why I think Enchantress is a perfectly balanced tech card. So Enchantress, a 4 cost 4 power. So almost the same stat line as Cosmo, right? Well, not really. When you only go up 1 power for 1 cost, that's like a negative, okay? If anything, to be on the same level of Cosmo, she should be like a 4-6, 4-5 at the very least, okay? So her power level isn't good. And her on reveal can be countered by, you guessed it, Mr. Cosmo himself. Look at this puppy dog. It's running rampant. It's crazy. So there you go. It's not an ongoing ability. See, Cosmo's ability, it can't be stopped. Once it's an ongoing, the only way to get rid of that ongoing would be with Enchantress or a Rogue, right? But you can't, because Cosmo shuts those down, and it doesn't matter with reveal priority. So you literally can't counter that dog, whereas Enchantress can actually be countered quite easily. Not to mention, if you can't Cosmo Enchantress, her ability only goes at once. It's an on reveal, not ongoing, right? So if you didn't hit the ongoing cards that you wanted, well, you can't just do it again, or they can play ongoing cards there without worrying about Enchantress happening again. It's already taken place, unless you Odin her for some reason. That could be like an mega big brain play, but like that, you don't see that very often. And lastly, similar to Cosmo, she only affects 1 location. There are some cards, let's talk about Killmonger, that affects the whole board. Dude, I'm trying to play a flood deck with a bunch of 1-drops, and Killmonger happens on like turn 5, and my entire board's gone, and my deck theme is dead. That's insane. Like I think Killmonger should only destroy like the first 3 1 costs played, or maybe only like a certain amount, or at a certain location. The fact that he hits the entire board is just wild. Okay, let's get back to the good. Control decks, they're fun. I've enjoyed control decks in almost every genre, every card game I have played. And to top it off, even though there's a lot of collection problems in Marvel Snap, at least you get a lot of these tech cards early on, right? Enchantress, Cosmo, Killmonger. In fact, during beta, because flood decks were so abundant, they actually dropped Killmonger and Sandman down to Series 2, so that players had access to those counters or those tech options earlier on to kind of mitigate the meta that way. And I think that would be a great way to balance the meta a little bit, is start dropping more cards from Series 3 to 2 to give players the access to those cards a little bit earlier. That could shuffle things up. Right now, the way it is, probably not, but we'll see. And a last quick note is that locations can act as the counters as well. So not only are you getting countered by like your opponent's stuff, but your locations can counter them as well. And I actually think that's a good thing. I like it when the locations restrict certain decks. It just makes it so you have to be a little bit more creative in where you play the cards. If you do have an ongoing deck and the Isle of Silence shows up, well, you're obviously not playing there. You got to find avenues elsewhere. It makes value for your opponent's Enchantress skyrocket. But if it's like nowhere, and then I don't know, like Sinister London, and my opponent gets 2 Cosmos, and all of a sudden the entire board is no honor reveals. I'm like, what am I doing with my Black Panther? Like, get me out of here. I'm smashing the retreat button. But I like it how there are locations that restrict certain deck archetypes. It's just another way of kind of balancing the game. But again, we just have to look at these tech cards and maybe make some changes. But anyways, that's just my quick couple of takes. I thought this was a really interesting topic when I heard about it from those 2 content creators. I'm interested to know what you guys think. My conclusion is I love tech cards. I like counter cards. I don't even know what you want to call them. I'm running with tech right now. But essentially, I like them in the game. But when they are too frequent, when they are all bundled together in one deck, and that is at the top of the meta and shutting everything down, it is a problem. And there's a few cards that I think need to get whacked with the Nerf bat. I'm going to put out a patch prediction video soon, so stay tuned for that. I'm just going to have some fun and think about some possible changes to a few of these cards and a few of the other ones, okay? Because we are probably getting a patch with the new season, which is going to be this next Tuesday, so it's pretty hype. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, guys. Comment below what you think about tech cards in Marvel Snap, if you think it's a problem, or if you think it's fine. Let me know. Anyways, thank you, and I'll catch you next time.